as Liu Sheng calmly walked away from the arena after his victory. The announcer was momentarily speechless, a look of astonishment on his face. However, his surprise quickly turned into explosive euphoria. He shouted into the microphone with boundless energy, proclaiming that it was one punch, another one. He explained that even against a genius of Bing Long's caliber, Liu Sheng only needed a single blow to end the battle. The announcer, whose image was projected on massive holographic screens all over the stadium, continued to hype up the incredible result to the roaring crowd. He reminded them that Bing Long was a peak level 11 warrior with an extraordinary physique, and yet she couldn't withstand Liu Sheng's attack for even a moment. He wondered aloud if the immortal bloodline was truly so overwhelmingly powerful. A spectator commented in amazement that it was all so fast. They didn't even get a chance to see what kind of powers Bing Long had before she was defeated. Meanwhile, in the arena, Bing Long remained standing, her head bowed, completely dejected by her crushing defeat. With a mischievous smile, the announcer abruptly changed the subject. He mentioned the word speed and, to everyone's surprise, used the moment to launch into a commercial break. With great enthusiasm, he introduced a new tonic developed by a major corporation, holding up a box with a picture of a kidney on it. He claimed the product greatly enhanced a certain male ability and that its effects lasted for an astonishing 30 days. The audience's reaction was immediate. Lan jumped up furiously, shouting and asking who the hell let that idiot on stage. Raolan watched the scene with a look of deep irritation. He thought to himself that not only had the host deliberately incited the others to attack Liu Sheng, but now he dared to run an ad for male enhancement products at an event of this magnitude. Next to him was Ecclesia. Raolan explained to her that he had already complained to the propaganda department, but they told him this host was specifically chosen by a major sponsor, and furthermore, the audience seemed to enjoy this kind of show. Ecclesia, clearly annoyed, put a hand to her forehead and thought about how stupid the whole situation was. As Liu Sheng stood in the waiting area after his victory, a communication request came through. He accepted the call, and a holographic screen appeared, showing his sister, Yui Qingya. Her face was pressed against the screen with excitement as she exclaimed how incredibly strong her big brother was. Her enthusiasm was almost overwhelming, and she eagerly asked when he would teach her his techniques. Her face reflected in his eyes. Internally, Liu Sheng reflected on the situation with a sigh. He thought to himself that he had always tried to be a low-key and polite person, but it seemed that from then on he had no choice but to continue being in the spotlight. He looked down with a faint smile and then looked up with newfound resolve. He concluded that there was no other way. In order to put his family's worries to rest, he would have to defeat each of his opponents as quickly and decisively as possible. Following Liu Sheng's match, the next pair of contestants entered the arena. One was a man with pointed ears from the Xuanyuan star sector, and the other was a woman from the Zilin star sector. Both were described as renowned super geniuses. Their battle was incredibly fierce and lasted for more than 10 hours, a stark contrast to the brief fight between Liu Sheng and Bing Long. The intensity was on a completely different level. With massive explosions of energy rocking the arena, Liu Sheng watched the match with interest, as this was the first time he had closely observed a battle between such high-level, transcendent beings. The fight ended with the female genius from the Zilin star sector emerging victorious after a spectacular final clash. The battle had been so destructive that the entire asteroid-sized arena was left shattered and in ruins, forcing the tournament organizers to quickly dispatch repair crews to fix the damage. The announcer, then joined by a female co-host, passionately commented on the epic battle, successfully igniting the crowd's emotions and whipping them into a frenzy. The audience was ecstatic, with many declaring that this was what a true semi-final match of a tournament spanning 12 star sectors should look like. They felt the earlier fight between Liu Sheng and Bing Long had been over so quickly that it made them wonder if it had been a fixed match. From his seat in the stands overlooking the newly repaired arena, Liu Sheng reflected on the previous battle he had just witnessed. He concluded that he had gained some valuable insight, The power of transcendent physiques was on a completely different level compared to ordinary stellar races, as their very life essence and biological structure were far more perfect. It was like two paper boats on the water. One boat had to start rowing slowly, while the other was gently pushed by a bar of soap, which was enough to trigger a warp drive and send it to light speed, illustrating the vast difference in potential. This realization led him to a confident conclusion about his own abilities. He felt that his own power systems, the stellar body and the sun god sphere, were of an extremely high level, and at least within these 12-star sectors, he had yet to see anything stronger. The tournament, which he had initially thought would be boring, had suddenly become much more interesting, as it was a perfect opportunity to witness the clash of various different power systems. Just then, his attention was caught by a striking woman with flowing red hair and a sleek blue suit walking down a nearby corridor. A dark, ethereal energy swirled around her as she moved with a powerful presence. Liu Shang's eyes widened slightly in curiosity, and he turned to ask who she was. Next to him, Lon smiled, replying that he had just been about to introduce her. Lon explained that the woman was Gay Lei, a member of the Blue Pole Demon Flame family from the Black Lin star sector. She possessed a high-grade transcendent physique and was at the peak of level 11, making her one of the key opponents they needed to watch out for. Liu Shang observed her, noticing that her unique blue flames were the complete opposite of his own stellar flames. While his were dominant and explosive, hers were cold, corrosive, and enchanting. He found her power system fascinating and thought that if he got the chance, studying its structure could provide unexpected insights and help him on his own path. Meanwhile, the announcer returned to the stage, declaring that the arena repairs were complete and the next match was about to begin. He dramatically introduced the next contestant as a notorious space pirate, a man who had once single-handedly slaughtered an entire fleet and famously frozen an entire star with his bare hands, a name that echoed throughout the Hill star sector. After a dramatic pause, he pointed to the sky. A massive holographic screen appeared, displaying the profile of the most exceptional genius in the history of the Hill star sector, the ice demon, Monroe. The crowd erupted into a thunderous roar, chanting his title over and over again. Ice demon, ice demon, ice demon. Seeing the crowd's wild reaction, Liu Shang turned to Lon, asking if this Monroe was really so famous. Lon explained that when Monroe first rose to prominence, his title of Ice Demon had been known far beyond just the Hill star sector. The genius of 5 or 6 surrounding star sectors had been completely overshadowed by his brilliance. Lon added that until Liu Shang appeared, Monroe had been the most anticipated genius, having accomplished many unbelievable feats, making him a truly formidable figure. Liu Shang then asked if the story about him freezing an entire star was true. With a thoughtful expression, Lon admitted there was likely some exaggeration to the tale. He speculated it had probably been a very small, dying star. However, he quickly added that even so, it was an incredible achievement. He had never heard of any other level 11 warrior capable of such a feat, and he warned Liu Shang that Monroe's power was not to be underestimated. Just then, Monroe made his grand entrance, descending into the arena with his massive, angelic white wings spread wide. His opponent, a muscular warrior with spiky hair, stood ready. He shouted Monroe's name, preparing to challenge him, but his voice faltered as he began to tremble uncontrollably. Monroe didn't move. He simply stared at his opponent, his single visible eye glowing with an intense, cold blue light. In the next instant, without any warning, a massive pillar of ice erupted from the ground beneath the opponent, instantly encasing him in a solid block of ice, freezing him completely solid in the middle of the arena. The announcer, watching the scene unfold, was left sweating and stammering, remarking on how utterly arrogant and overwhelming the display of power had been. The announcer, recovering from his shock, officially declared Monroe the winner. He shouted into the microphone that Monroe had completely frozen his opponent with just a single glance, questioning how anyone could fight against such an overwhelming power gap. This incredible feat immediately sent a wave of speculation through the crowd. The consensus was that Monroe must have already advanced to level 11, otherwise such immense power would be impossible. Spectators began to whisper amongst themselves, discussing the rumor that Monroe had reached this legendary level. The realization sank in across the audience. One person commented that if it was true, there was no point in continuing the tournament, as Monroe was guaranteed to be the champion. Another agreed, wondering who could possibly stand his way. They dismissed the idea of even Liu Shang winning, noting that, despite his immortal bloodline, he had only just reached level 10, putting him 2 entire realms below Monroe. Down in the arena, Monroe looked up towards the stands, his gaze fixing directly on Liu Shang and Lon. With a look of intense focus, he sent a silent, telepathic message to Liu Shang, telling him that he would be waiting for him. Liu Shang stared back, his expression unreadable but filled with equal intensity. At that moment, a massive holographic display in the sky updated the official win probabilities for the remaining top contestants. Before Monroe's match, Liu Shang's probability was at 50%. Then, after Monroe's overwhelming display, the odds shifted dramatically. Liu Shang's probability plummeted to 30%, while Monroe's soared to 70%. Lon shivered, remarking on how truly powerful Monroe was and admitting that just being glanced at by him had been enough to make his hair stand on end. Lon turned to Liu Shang with a serious expression and asked him if he was confident he could win against Monroe. Liu Shang simply replied that he didn't know. Surprised by his blunt honesty, Lon put a friendly arm around Liu Shang's shoulder. He advised him that even if he wasn't confident, he shouldn't say it so openly, as it could be seen as fear before the fight had even begun. Then, Lon tried to comfort him, reminding him that it was okay if he lost to Monroe, who was much older and more experienced. He reassured him that with his immortal bloodline, he was destined for greatness and would inevitably surpass Monroe in the future, so he shouldn't feel too much pressure then. However, Liu Shang, with a bead of sweat running down his temple, explained his reasoning. He told Lon that he had said he didn't know because he genuinely didn't. He confessed that he still didn't know the true extent of his own power, and it was clear that what Monroe had shown so far was only the tip of the iceberg. He concluded by asking a simple logical question: how could you possibly compare two unknown variables? This video ends. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe to our channel.